Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health, one topic at a time. So guys, I'm so grateful that there's so much information now coming out, like retrospective information about things that researchers have been finding about COVID, long COVID. But today I want to talk about an issue that I have with almost every headline that I read anymore. So just keep watching. Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say my usual thank you and welcome. I see I have a few new subscribers, and thank you so much for subscribing. I greatly appreciate it. For those of you who don't already know, my channel is just a public service. I don't load it up with affiliate links. I don't want to have biased reviews, biased information. I don't want to prey on people's fears or anything like that. So my way forward is to grow the channel. And so anybody who subscribes very much helps me with that. So I so appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed, but you find my content helpful, I really hope you will consider subscribing and please share with anybody who might enjoy the content. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of discussion in the Sandy's DIY Health Advocacy Facebook group. So for those of you who don't know what that is, the quick plug, there's a Facebook page. You can go on over there and find it. You can ask to join the group, and there's an interactive discussion there, which is really fun. It's a nice group. People put up articles and whatnot, and we discuss them. And there are several that have come up lately where it's like, oh, we've been waiting for this, right? We've been waiting to hear, oh, what are the long-term risks of this? What's the likelihood I'm going to have this issue with sense of smell? Was the sense of smell issue from the brain or from the nose? And finally, like, we're getting some answers, and I'm like so happy to hear that. But you know, there's just a couple in the last few days that have come up that I realized there's this common denominator pet peeve that I have. And that is that some of these studies finished enrolling in like the beginning of 2021 when almost nobody was fully vaccinated yet. And I think that's fine. I think it's still really helpful information, but I really wish that the publishers of these studies, and more importantly, the news outlets that report these studies to the population, would be very careful to include in the title whether these studies have included vaccinated or unvaccinated people or both, or certainly at a very minimum, make a highlight of the time during which the study stopped enrolling. Because when I read some of the really bad stuff, I mean, I've read some pretty concerning stuff lately, and then I go look through the fine print, because let's be honest, most people just read the headline and the take-home lesson. Once I go through the fine print, I see, oh, this study stopped enrolling in like April of 2021, and it was in like some rural area in England. Most people weren't fully vaccinated by then yet. And I think that it's just very important for us to hear. And it's not only important to know so that you just know, who this study involved and how whether, you can question how well you can cross-reference it to yourself or the population at large now. But I think it would make fertile ground for some comparisons, right? And that would really be helpful. So maybe somebody would do the same study now and look at people who've gotten breakthrough cases and see if their risks are similar, different. Yeah, I don't know. I suspect it'd be a lot different. So one of the studies I saw recently was about gray matter in the brain, and that was a study that was done out of England, and they enrolled patients, and I think they stopped enrolling in April of 2021, and they found that the impact of COVID on the brain was substantial, and even in people who had very minimally symptomatic cases. So people with very mild cases of COVID, again, it's not about the case that you have. Like the acute case is, that's like the tip of the iceberg, and under the waterline is this huge iceberg that you can't see. And that's like long COVID and all the other aspects of it. And they found that the impact on gray matter in the brain, or loss thereof, was substantial, and even in people who had very mild cases of COVID. Now, like I said, this study stopped enrolling in April of 2021. So I doubt anybody in that study was vaccinated, certainly not fully vaccinated. And I think that it'd be very worthwhile if, when we have these headlines that pop up about this, that we make a point of that. I think it would make for some very good study now, and see what populations with breakthrough look like. It seems like that would be a very easy study to do and compare. Yeah, another one that I saw was something that there was quite a buzz around a couple of weeks ago, talking about cardiologists, at least in the United States, that, and probably worldwide, they're all braced for having an epidemic of cardiac problems post-COVID for years to come, because COVID has quite an impact on the autonomic nervous system that regulates the heart rate. And that's why you hear about some people who are post-COVID, they still have really rapid heart rates when they stand up from a sitting down position. And the vessels apparently don't compensate like they used to, because the autonomic nerve supply is damaged. And there was a very poignant article written about that just recently. But again, I looked at it and everybody was done enrolling, like, I think it was very early in 2021. So ostensibly, like, nobody would have been vaccinated in that study. And I think it would be very helpful to make a comparison. I would like to say I think it would make a compelling case for people who are still holding out and not wanting to be vaccinated. But I just think that that's not so much hesitancy anymore. I think anybody who was truly vaccine hesitant has probably been open to all the data that's come out, and it probably a while ago got vaccinated. And I think anybody who's still not is quite willful about it, and I don't know if anything would change their minds. And by the way, I'm not here saying that there's no risks to the vaccines, and we're not going to find there are problems with the vaccines. I myself discussed shingles that seems to be related to the messenger RNA vaccines. I got shingles on my second dose, and after my boost, I got a very mild case of shingles. And I think we'll probably find other issues, but sometimes people put that kind of thing in the Facebook group too, where they find, oh, there's this issue that's been found or that issue that's been discussed. And very often it's an in vitro thing. It's not in vivo. It's not a real world finding. And I'm just going to go back to, again, how deadly COVID is. And almost anything I hear about that a vaccine might cause, and it's usually, a pretty far-fetched sort of accusation about what the vaccine might cause. COVID can trump it hands down. COVID causes so much devastation that I don't know what would it take to get me to not have had the vaccine. Now, maybe in the future we're going to find some other issues with the vaccines, like the messenger RNA vaccines, and no doubt we'll get better and better vaccines anyway because variants are going to change and things like that. But you have to kind of evaluate with the choices that you have at the time. And in the time of COVID just ravaging the world with leaving all the destruction in its wake, I think it was a very easy decision, and I wouldn't change a thing about it, even if I found out something pretty bad today. So, and by the way, I don't think we're really going to, but I'm very glad that I chose to get vaccinated, and I'm very grateful to like Moderna and Pfizer for what they've brought to humankind and all the suffering they've prevented, which is why I think they deserve their day in the sun. And I really think that it's time to start looking critically whenever you see these studies that are done and looking at some of the consequences of COVID and long COVID. I really think it's important to ask this question. Is this vaccinated or unvaccinated? Very often when it doesn't say, and you look back and you see if somebody's done a study that they started 2 years ago, chances are most anybody in that study was not fully vaccinated. So you'll be seeing me put comments like that up in the Facebook group. I love the articles that people are posting. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about that. I really value the research that has been done, and I think it's wonderful that we're finally getting some answers. But I think it is also very important to know that whenever you see a study that was done, even a good double-blind, placebo-controlled, all it speaks about is the people who were in those groups, the people who were in the control group and the experimental group. And sometimes that's kind of a narrow group, and especially pre-vax, post-vax, I think that's a very significant issue. And so I want to look at every single thing that we read through that lens, just to get a sense maybe over time, hopefully, that there's a difference in people who are vaccinated. I suspect there is. And so far, what I have seen, not everything addresses that, but in studies that have addressed that, it seems like the risk of long haul is about cut in half. And I think the reason we see all this long haul is because COVID, the way I've heard it put, is that COVID is not really a respiratory disease at all. It's actually an immune system disease. And I think that's the root of the long COVID, that you get these immune system dyscrasias. And so I think we're going to find that vaccination helps that, and then some. And in some studies, including an Israeli study I talked about here on my channel a while back, it was even better than like 5%. I think what I had read prior is maybe you have a 10% chance of long haul if you got COVID unvaccinated, and about a 5% chance of long haul if you were vaccinated. But the Israeli study that I found showed that really the degree of symptoms that people would report as being indicative of long haul went among vaccinated people regressed back to baseline. So meaning they're about the same as the incidence of those same symptoms in the population at large of people who had never been infected. So I thought that was really great news. And yeah, so I do think that we have to start thinking about this when we read more information that's coming out. And I wish that journalists would be exquisitely careful when they report on any of these findings, that we make sure we understand whether they are pre-vaccination or include vaccination among the subjects. So let me know what your experience has been, if you've seen anything else about. I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, so maybe it's one of the few original thoughts I've ever had. So let me know your thoughts about it, and until next time, be well. Bye-bye.